Woo! 9 o'clock. Alright. Okay. Hold on. Alright, welcome to my third live stream, and this time, hopefully, there aren't that many technical issues. I think I cleared it up. Most of it, I think, was just me not getting used to it, so. Alright, we're gonna start. Alright, so, once again, my little jar of ideas. So I don't remember what I put in each one of these little pieces, but I'm just gonna draw one out. See what happens. Okay, we're gonna shake it. Okay, let's see. I'm getting kind of nervous. Oh god. What? Oh god. Oh, this is gonna be good. Okay. Make a super shoujo comic panel. I don't know if you can read that. Kinda. Shoujo comic panel. This is perfect. Actually, I didn't plan this, but I was gonna show my progress on a comic. I'm like a mini comic, like a 4-page comic that I'm doing today. And today also I was gonna do a comic. I mean not comic, a drawing challenge, and it's a comic panel drawing challenge. So this is gonna be good. All right. So last time I did a I did this, which was a an athletic woman's body type challenge, and I decided to do a shot put thrower or a hammerhead thrower. I don't remember what it's called, but she's a strong woman. So this is what the image that I got out of it. She looks kind of like a greaser. But that was a quick challenge. But today is gonna be good because I'm gonna do a shoujo challenge. If you don't know what shoujo comic is, it's like a super girl. It's supposed to be a girl's comic book. It's supposed to be like it's just like their main target audience are women, and I believe it's an age from like anywhere from middle school to like college, which is like, you know, preteen to teen, young adult. So this is gonna be fun. A shoujo comic panel. That's what we're gonna do. I'm actually gonna try to look up some examples, just for reference. And this is gonna be fun. And what I like about like typical shoujo comics and stuff, their panels are super detailed in the face, especially the eyes. There's always like budding roses and sparkles and glitter. A lot of gradients. Very like pretty, shiny, sparkly, hazed out, and it's gonna be fun to do. I think. Okay, well, I guess I'll go into more of like thumbnailing how I want the comic panel to look, but as an example of what I usually do. So this is one of my mini comics that I'm working on. It's only going to be 4 or 5 pages, really short, and it's funny because well, when I was in college, one of my favorite classes was a narrative class, and I purposely took a narrative class that centered around comics and how to explain storytelling through comic book format. And I really liked it because I enjoy reading comics, and just going from panel to panel, page to page, you kind of get the whole story, either through how the characters interact or just dialogue and stuff. It's just like it's a better way to read a book, I guess. So I really like comics and how they look in general, no matter what format. American comics versus um, like manga or manacheks, like all those different styles, I think influenced me a lot, and their storytelling abilities also influenced me a lot. So um, I guess I try to incorporate them as much as possible. But in college, my favorite assignment was basically having to illustrate a mini, like at least 4 pages of a story, but without using dialogue. And I think that's my favorite thing to do, only because now it's more challenging. Like, you don't have to have people talking all the time. And I think that's one of the frustrating things about comics sometimes, is that they have way too much narration and not enough imagery. I mean, it could be a time issue where people don't have time to illustrate all they want in a comic because, deadlines. To be realistic, it might be easier to fill a comic panel with speech bubbles. And I totally get that. That makes sense. But challenging myself to not use any speech bubbles at all, or any dialogue or monologuing or even anything, any of that, I think is a lot of fun. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is to draw like silent comics, basically. And it helps that I really like silent movies. I mean, they obviously have, panels of narration, but yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things to do. So, yeah, so this is a example of my comic. I've been working on this for a really long time. Probably, I got the idea in like 2013, but I haven't really sat down to actually draw anything out concrete. I did like really rough drawings of it, like super rough. I think I was kind of like either really tired, or I don't remember what it was, but it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, I really want to make this comic. And that was it. So this is a rough, as you can see, it's like literally just like tiny thumbnails. But this is enough for me to go by because I know what I want out of it. So if you notice, like if you notice this panel right here, the very top panel up here, this is supposed to be the guy walking through the forest at night. And so it's visually similar to this one, except that the figure is obviously darker than in the thumbnail. Darker than I wanted him to be. But like you notice that everything else is blacked out. There's like a light in the distance. So yeah, and if you notice here, it's kind of like, I don't know if you can see it. In this panel, there's a longer panel. And in the longer panel, you'll notice that there's a kind of like a really dark atmosphere. Everything else in the foreground is really light. and then there's an image on the bottom below here where there's a bunch of trees and him kind of walking here, and you'll notice that in the actual comic it kind of does the same thing where there's a foreground, goes all the way up to the mountainside like that. It's so I know what I want in the image. Like, I know what I want already in the comic. I just need to flesh it out. And so that's why it's taking so long, because I was like, oh, I'll do this in a few hours. Like, it's so easy, but it takes time to do historically accurate imagery. And by historically accurate, I mean this guy's a knight, so I'm not very good at drawing things other than fabric. So metal, um, plastic, well, like those kind of things I can make look like a different material just because of how I shade it, but the difference between a metal piece, like if I were to draw a guy wearing entire metal armor versus like a plastic sheath or something, I don't know, like the difference in tone and all that other stuff, it's there is no difference. So like you would assume that everything looks all the materials look the same, other than if it were like a piece of metal versus like my shirt, like a cotton shirt. Like you would know the difference by how I drew it, but you wouldn't know what that material was exactly. So yeah, so that like learning how to do that is also a challenge. I'm trying to get better at it, and I think the best way to do it is to see how other artists their other artists interpret their work, their not work, their materials, or how they render certain objects. And you could you could look at that and you can borrow that visual imagery and try to hone it to your own shorthand, so you know, for future reference, like that's how you're going to draw metal from now on, or that's how you're going to draw cotton, or whatever it is. So I've been trying to do that more and more, and I think the best person in terms of doing like comics and brushwork and ink work, one of the best people to look at, I think, is Paul Pope. You know, my cousin um would always say to me like, "Oh, do you know Paul Pope?" And I was like, "No, I don't. I really don't." But he said that, you know, your work kind of reminds me of Paul Pope's work because you're doing a lot of ink work, a lot of brush work. And so I looked at his stuff and I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know why I didn't know about him before, but he would tell me all this stuff, and he would say like, you know, just reference him, you know, look at his work and just kind of grow off that, you know. Um, but don't copy. Copying is a little different, but like just strongly referencing another person's work is fine. But anyways, yeah. So I kind of knew, at least for the first 3 pages, how it's gonna look like and how the panels are gonna be laid out. I tend to work strongly in fours. On rare occasions, 5 panels, but I always like to do a all-encompassing shot. So it's gonna be like a huge horizontal panel, and then maybe 1 or 2 vertical, and then more horizontal. I don't know, but I almost always in a comic situation, at least when I'm doing it, I always do a horizontal composition. And it's not to say that I dislike a vertical panel to start, it's just that I think that's what I'm most comfortable with, is just having a wide panel to kind of explain what's happening visually. Um, I mean, most people do that anyways, but I never start with, like, say, a splash page. because I don't think it's very interesting on its own, especially when you're looking at a comic. It's just like looking at another cover. And that's fine for some people, but I can't do that when I'm starting out. Maybe later on in life, maybe I'll start doing that more, but at least for now, that's how I would always do it. Always have a horizontal composition as the first panel. Um, and then from there on, I just kind of grow and see how I like the way the images flow together. Why do I need this panel? Does it explain anything new? Um, like that's the only way I kind of try to create comics, is that you try to get a little bit more of the story as you read it. But my comics also tend to be very slow paced, and it's not like I have a lot of action scenes in them, because honestly, I haven't really made that many action like comics. But I wish I could show you my school comics, because I think the formula is almost exactly the same. It's always a horizontal panel, vertical panel, maybe one or two, or maybe all horizontal. It'd be very slow. The first page is always like maybe a really tight shot of something, and a background, and then it kind of like slowly pans out, and then in each panel you'll see more and more of what's happening, or like more of the surrounding area, so you kind of be like, oh, I see a person standing at a door. Where are they standing in front of the door? Oh, well, the door is in front of like an apartment. The apartment's in a city, and where's the city? It's like, oh, it's like Chicago or New York, or whatever. And then that's how I like to start the first page, is just kind of go in and watch people, or the characters, slowly become incorporated into their surrounding space. So, but yeah, so. And inking comics are also really fun, because they tend to be kind of like really therapeutic. Either they could be really repetitive textures, or they could be, super experimental. Um, so like this is because it's like a mountain, and it's in nature. Things aren't always gonna be smooth or really reliable, or like really consistent. So that's what I try to go for here. It's just kind of inconsistent lines, textured lines, dry brush, um, that kind of thing. Also helps to have a lot of reference photos. And what I mean by that is just kind of like, you have to know what these things look like in real life. I mean, you obviously know from growing up and living or being outside of your house, or whatever, but it's not the same as actually looking at something for the first time, or like you have an impression already, like a set perception of what an object looks like, but you should always look at photos and have reference, so you know what they actually look like. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So like my visual memory of a tree is just kind of like, oh, a pine tree is a triangle shape, you know. But there are different types of pine trees. Or evergreens. There are types that are have like full branches of, say, leaves or needles. There are others that are completely sparse and all you see are branches and little specks of leaves or needles at the end of each branch. So it depends on what kind of feel you're going for. Since this is a mountainside and it's just kind of um, like a creepy atmosphere vibe, I just wanted to create pine trees and stuff that are kind of spindly, really inconsistent, and that something that could create weird shadows, you know, if you were walking in the woods. And these kind of pine trees are actually the easiest thing to do, because literally you just go 1, 2, and then you just kind of get wider brush strokes each time you go down. But yeah. So this, for example, is the panel that I didn't want to kind of touch because I didn't want to mess anything up. And you know, it's one thing to ink something at a bigger scale, but because he's so small, I wanted to kind of be more careful with it. So sometimes what I like to do, instead of using a brush for really fine detail, sometimes I do pen. I do use pen on occasion, but what I don't like about pens sometimes is that you get really consistent lines, and that's why it's easier to use like crow quill pens or dip pens, so like pens like this. But what's really frustrating about these kind of pens is that you have to constantly dip them. Which is okay, I guess. I used to use dip pens exclusively in high school. And I really liked it. I really liked dip pens because I got that kind of the political cartoon type line work. So, you know, a lot of great cross hatching. I'm using a deleter holder. And what I like about this holder is that you can use 2 types of nibs. And what I mean by that is that you can use either really thin nibs like this, or you could use really wide tip nibs. So this one, for example, is only like a half circle, semicircle type look. And this one's a closed loop. So you can use both of these in this holder. Normally you would have to get 2 different types of pen holders, but this one's pretty good. And you could get really nice variation of line weight with dip pens, which I really like. But I don't know, brushwork for me is just kind of easier because I can get a really, really wide range of line weight really fast. You know, and I could get these textures that I can't get with a nib. I don't know, it flows a little better. Because sometimes you don't have to dip. I mean, if you're using like a brush pen, but if you're using a regular brush, you know, you obviously have to dip. Okay, so I'm gonna start inking this guy. And honestly, I mean, I'm really scared that I'm gonna F it up. But I'm pretty sure it'll be okay. I mean, it's like it's not that bad. It's not gonna be that hard. Okay. I also have to be careful being consistent with this small image of the knight and the larger image. So I have to make sure that the details are consistent. You know, art is tedious. Thank you. What up, Judy? Shout out to Judy. She knows how to ink. Check out judywongillustration.com. Shameless plugs all the way. Shameless plug. So here I'm just doing really fine lines. Trying to make sure that I follow the same type of shading that I did here. And if I mess up, it's okay. This is so small that it just kind of doesn't really matter. But see, like also filling in stuff with a crow quill pen is a lot harder. Whereas with the brush, I can just kind of do one swipe, one stroke, and I'm done. It also doesn't eat away at the paper, so it's a little easier. Thanks, Overclocks. Thank you. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or if you want to know something. I'll try my best to answer. And always when using a dip pen, you always want to have like a spare piece of scrap piece of paper or something nearby, so that so that you get the line that you want. And then sometimes what happens is if you don't clean it either, it just kind of blobs up and then it'll drip onto your work, and then you're messed up forever, because you're either going to have to completely erase it, white it out, and then do it, or you know, it's a pain. Oh, involved in art? Ooh, oh, hey, hi, Miss Orgy. Miss Orgy? MS Orgy? I don't know. What age? Actually, I kind of have always been inspired by art, but I really didn't start drawing until probably like when I was like 10 or 11, 12. So like probably in middle school I actually started doing more art related stuff. So yeah, I think middle school, because then at that time I was like really into like Card Captor and like, you know, TV shows. Card Captor, but Card Captor. Let's see, Card Captor. I mean, I did watch Sailor Moon, but not a lot of it. I watched more like like Gundam Wing, Thundercats, um, Voltron. I did watch a lot of Adult Swim because I thought I was being cool, or like Toonami, but that was like my thing. Um, oh yeah, that's true. My friend just gave me advice. Use a dry the like those Brillo, not Brillo pads, but the green, the double-sided sponges where they have a rough textured green side. Use that to kind of carefully scrape off dried ink from your nibs so it doesn't clump up and screw up your nibs. Proper maintenance is always required when using anything, but especially especially nibs. You also want to be careful not to scrub so much on your metal nibs because the metal does eventually run like scrape off, like kind of erode.